Hi, and welcome to the newest installment of the Hardcore Skeptic, the supplemental podcast to go with the Brainstorm podcast. I'm your host, Corey, and in this episode I did a short interview with Katie Gibbs from the Evidence for Democracy organization. I would have liked to have had the whole crew around to do this interview with me, because they may have had questions I didn't think of, but we couldn't make our schedules mix very well, and I ended up doing it solo. I think Katie was a great interview, and I wanted to give her a bit of free rein to speak her mind. She was very informative and great fun to talk to. I also noticed that she was very diplomatic with some of her opinions. She's much nicer to the Conservative Party than I am. Sorry about the sound for this episode. I'm not sure why, but I couldn't get it to sound any better than this. I'll definitely figure out a better way to record interviews next time. Anyway, here you go, my interview with Katie Gibbs. Okay, well, I guess first off, welcome to the Brainstorm podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Always feels a little silly saying that, but that's okay. So your name is Katie Gibbs, and you are the founder of Evidence for Democracy.
Yeah, one of the co-founders.
Co-founders?
Yes.
Okay, and I guess what is Evidence for Democracy? Like if somebody didn't know, how would you describe it?
Yeah, so we're a science-based nonprofit organization that is promoting the transparent use of evidence in government decision-making. So it sounds pretty simple and common sense, but unfortunately we don't actually see a lot of that. And so, we thought it was time to have a new organization that was really sort of building the public demand and the political pressure for evidence-based decision-making.
Makes sense to me, but what else? Okay, so I guess what does evidence-based decision-making mean? Like, if someone didn't think scientifically, what would that mean to them, perhaps?
Well, we'd really focus on three things, and that is, first you have to actually have evidence. So you need to, sufficiently fund science and research so that we actually have, evidence and information on things that are going on around us so that we can make informed decisions. Okay. The second part is that information should be openly shared to the public, so not just kept behind closed doors, so that the public can make informed decisions in addition to policymakers. And then the third aspect is actually making the policy decisions based on the evidence, not just ideology or what is politically convenient. And so often as well, evidence-based decision making also sort of means evaluating the outcome of your policy decision and being, willing to sort of actually track it and see if it's doing what you thought it was going to do, and being willing to admit when it isn't, right. And, going back and changing it.
That sounds pretty reasonable.
Yes, it does.
Okay, so we talk a lot about, you mentioned public discourse of or letting the public in on the evidence. Mm-hmm. So are scientists being muzzled in Canada?
Absolutely. So, I think pretty much everyone is in agreement on this except the government. I find it quite shocking, actually, that they sort of continue to deny that this is happening. There's an overwhelming body of evidence showing that there definitely is a communication problem right now for government scientists. There's been, over a dozen very well-documented cases where government scientists have published their research in journals, in scientific journals, and then have not been allowed to do media interviews about that work. PIPS, the union that represents government scientists, they did a survey of their members, and found that 90% of them said they could not speak freely about their work.
Wow.
Evidence for Democracy, we did a report that looked at the media policies for different government departments and found that overwhelmingly they did not support open communication between scientists and journalists. Okay. So, and on top of that, I've heard, firsthand accounts from, over a dozen scientists and science journalists, with just incredibly overwhelming examples of having to deal with this. So it is absolutely a problem.
So say a scientist had some evidence discussing climate change, and what would the process be that stops them from getting that out to the public? Like, is it filtered through somebody that says, okay, now this has to stop here?
Yeah, well, one of the most compelling examples came out a few months ago. And so Margaret Monroe, who up until recently was one of Canada's sort of longest running science journalists, and she filed a bunch of access to information requests and found out that in 2012, when Arctic ice was at its lowest level in history, the scientists at Canadian Ice Service wanted to hold a technical briefing to inform Canadians about what was going on. So, they monitor ice levels. They saw, holy crap, ice is at its lowest level in history. This is important. It's news. It's relevant to Canadians. We should hold a technical briefing on this. And they had to go through 9 different levels of approval in order to hold this briefing, wow. Which took, months and months and months, hundreds of emails, and eventually at the 6th level of approval, it was just canceled outright. So, that shows it's a perfect example of, just the kind of like censorship by bureaucracy that we're seeing. Right. And of course, during that time, the story still broke, but the Canadian journalists who were covering this couldn't interview Canadian scientists, so they ended up interviewing U.S. scientists, who don't know as much about the Canadian situation as our own scientists who are studying it. So right. It's really a shame that we didn't get to hear from our scientists on that issue.
For sure. Better to get it right from the scientists who did the research than
exactly
secondhand.
Well, and we're paying for that research. It's research that is paid for with our tax dollars. So why shouldn't we be able to have that information?
For sure. Yeah.
It's frustrating.
Yeah. No, I imagine it would be doubly so for somebody actually in the sciences. Like I find myself, I get talking about it sometimes and I get frustrated and I'm not even involved in the situation really. Do you think that this kind of bureaucracy or censorship by bureaucracy impacts the way that Canadians think about climate change or science in general?
I think so. And, where I've actually sort of heard this the most from is from other young scientists, the scientists that I went through my PhD cohort with. There really was this sort of sense that, they went into science because they felt it was a really prestigious career path. And then there was this sort of sense that, now that's completely shifted and now it's this sort of weird situation where you feel like the government doesn't like you and doesn't right. like what you do. And wow. It's especially weird for those of us who went into science, thinking it was this, really sort of great prestigious career path. Right. So it hurts a little bit. That's, kind of the sense that I've gotten from a lot of the young scientists that I know.
I imagine it'd be quite frustrating just going into the field.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we have a Minister of Science right now in the Parliament, or is that a
sort of. So we
position?
have we do, but it's a junior ministry. So it's not like its own department, and it's not a full minister. It's actually under the industry minister. So we do have a minister of state for science and technology, but it's sort of a junior minister under the overarching industry minister.
Okay. There was an email yesterday about some from Evidence for Democracy about some decision that was just voted on yesterday.
Yeah, so it's been a really busy few weeks. What happened was last week, the union representing government scientists staged a number of rallies across the country in order to support their push right now, which is that they're trying to get some science integrity measures actually included in government scientists' bargaining agreement.
Okay.
So this is a really sort of unique new step that I've never heard of happening before, where, instead of, they're a public sector union, and instead of bargaining for things like pay increases or pensions, they're trying to get measures included that say things like they can talk to the media, they can attend scientific conferences, things like that. So, that shows how bad things are.
No kidding.
But I think it's a really interesting move that could, really could go a long way to improve things. So that happened last week, and it got a lot of media coverage for this issue, which is excellent. And so following on that media coverage, the Liberals decided to put forward a science integrity motion for their opposition day. So the opposition parties get sort of a handful of days where they get to discuss one of their motions in Parliament all day. Okay. And the Liberal science and tech critic, Ted Hsu, who is one of the few MPs who has a PhD in science, he put forward a really good motion that basically was saying scientists should be, explicit that they can talk to the journalists. The government should create a new sort of science portal, to make it really easy for the public to access government science.
Oh, that would be great.
And calling for Canada to create a chief science officer, which would be sort of a new position that would oversee government science and provide science advice to government. So on Tuesday this week, that was debated all day in Parliament, and then there was a vote that evening. And unfortunately, the vote didn't pass. Not too surprising. But every single opposition MP voted in favor of it, with all of the Conservatives voting against it, unfortunately. So there was, it was still great to see this kind of political support for the issue. And what's even more interesting is that the Liberals actually committed that these things would be in their election platform.
Oh,
so
that's interesting.
That's a pretty big development. It's the first party that has really explicitly said that there's going to be some science measures in their election platform.
Wow. No, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a really great development, and certainly our hope is that will put the pressure on the other parties to do the same.
Right. At least the opposition parties might be more inclined to. I can't see the Conservatives changing their stance on science.
Well, it's probably unlikely, but I don't think that science is actually a right or left wing issue. I think there's a lot of wing people who do support science. So I hold out some hope that maybe those people will push the party to get behind some of these measures.
Well, that's very optimistic of you.
Well, actually on the Conservative, on their policy books, they do actually have, a statement calling for the creation of a chief science officer. So, I actually think that the support is there from a lot of their supporters. It just doesn't seem to be there from the leader and from the political end right now.
I don't know. You spoke at the non-conference last year? Was that last year? I did. Yeah, I was just talking to Spencer Lucas about setting up a secular conference in Saskatchewan here. and he was giving me some tips, and I remembered somebody mentioned you spoke at the non-conference last year. Will you be going this year?
I might be. It's sort of on my calendar. Hopefully, I hope to be able to attend.
Not as a speaker, though?
No, not this year.
I thought that was interesting. Anyway, I like the secular conferences.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. It's sort of not like a direct overlap with the work that E4D does, but definitely a lot of synergies there. And I think a lot of people in that sort of secular world, obviously also support the things that E4D is trying to do.
Right. Yeah. The whole pro-science idea is pretty prevalent.
Well, exactly. And, making decisions based on facts, not ideology.
Yeah, that's right. Just off the top of your head, where do you think this current anti-science kind of mentality comes from in the conservatives? Or in the government, I guess, rather than saying the conservatives?
There's sort of two main hypotheses. A lot of people think that there's sort of this underlying like Christian fundamentalism that is driving this. And, I actually don't think that that's what it is.
No.
I think it's just purely political. I think this government is very, very good so they have a sort of different strategy where they're not, targeting Canadians or voters in general. They're very much targeting these tiny slices of Canadians that they are going after, and they know exactly what little nuggets to offer those people. And I think that's really what this plays into. And I think, those people don't really care about science and aren't going to vote based on that anyway. So there's no benefit there for the conservatives to really champion the science issue,
I suppose.
So I think it's more just about shrewd politics than anything else. And of course, I think the government has been very clear that one of their goals is to make Canada an energy superpower. So I do think the resource extraction comes into that as well, in terms of, the science just certainly has the potential to be inconvenient for them. And so it's easier if, you make it harder for that science to get out.
Yeah, that makes sense. Doesn't have to be about religion if it can be about money.
Well, and power,
and power,
and I think realistically that it's not unique to this government. Like historically, there's often tensions between science and politics, and that's normal. It's just that this government has sort of gone to greater lengths to try to stop the science from being inconvenient than other governments have.
What are some of the plans that Evidence for Democracy has for on the short term, or even in the long term?
Yeah, well, everything right now is about the next federal election.
Right.
So we have a bunch of really exciting things coming up. Really soon, we're going to be launching a new sort of microsite that is called True North Smart and Free. And it's sort of a collection of stories of what has happened to science and smart decision making over the past few years. So it's definitely the most sort of like professional project that we've done in terms of, hiring professional graphic designers and web developers and communications people. And it looks slick. I'm really excited about it. And so it's really the goal there is that we want to remind people what has happened. Often people's memories are pretty short. And so we want to, pull some of the most egregious things that have happened over the past few years and, bring them back for people and remind people about them. And we've done it in a really sort of, simple language, putting things into context. so that it's also a place where it's really easy for someone to get up to speed on what has happened if they haven't been following the issue all along. Okay. So we're hoping that it's kind of that entry point for people on this issue, so all of those of us who know what's going on, we can share it and hopefully get some new people aware of what's been happening through the site. So it's really about, content and information and informing people what's happened. And then we're going to be launching our science pledge soon, which is getting Canadians, organizations, and candidates to declare their support for science and smart decision making. So we have a short pledge that, sort of summarizes the things that we want to see, and we're asking people to sign on to it. And what we're really trying to do is get candidates to sign on to it, and then we're going to be letting our supporters know which candidates in their riding have taken the pledge and which haven't, so they can use that to help inform how they're going to vote.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, and that's what's really
science.
And what's really exciting is that it's really the first time that we're seeing any kind of a science push during an election. Right. The science community has never really mobilized around an election before. So at least not in Canada. It's something that you see pretty often now in other countries, but it's new here. So it's, unfortunately, it kind of takes things getting really bad to get people mobilized, and especially scientists, but it's a really exciting opportunity at this point.
Yeah, I remember the first article I read about E4D was it mentioned that the older scientists never really wanted to get involved in the political spectrum at all. Mm-hmm. So, and then now it's a lot more younger scientists are really getting involved. Mm-hmm. I thought that was really excellent.
Yeah.
That was a while ago now, a few months anyway. How long has E4D been around? How long ago did you guys form?
So we've been around as an organization for a little over 2 years.
Okay.
And really it all got started when we organized the Death of Evidence rally, and that was in July 2012. So we did a big science protest that kind of just exploded into a much bigger thing than any of us had planned. And then E4D eventually sort of grew out of that.
Oh, right on. I think the first article I read about it was last summer. So,
yeah.
But we talked about it a little bit on the podcast then. Usually it's a panel discussion. So,
yeah. Awesome.
I have something here. It's just a bullet point. Campaign to add members? ?
Am
sure
I
supposed to
know what it means? I think maybe you're referring to we have a monthly donor drive going on right now. That might be it. We're trying to get monthly donors because as we're a small nonprofit organization, so realistically, our work is made possible by people who care about science and right. Evidence-based decision-making, contributing generously to us. So, right now we're trying to get monthly donors, so people to, sign up to give monthly, even if it's just $10 a month, because that kind of, reliable, stable income is what really helps us plan our future campaigns.
For sure, yeah. No, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. How many people are involved in, I guess you might not have an exact number, but approximately?
Yeah, well, we have about 13,000 supporters across the country.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's great. We've got 4 staff now, 2 full-time and 2 part-time. 2 of us in Ottawa, and then 1 in Vancouver, 1 in Halifax. So we're tiny but national. We have a ton of amazing volunteers. We're so volunteer driven. The capacity and generosity of our volunteers, I'm always surprised by it. At any given time, we probably have like 50 active volunteers on the go, and we have like over 200 volunteers in total. We have over 300 scientists on our network of experts list.
Wow.
So we have the sort of expert list that are basically, experts in a whole bunch of different fields who want to engage more with the public, the media, policymakers. So we sort of, work with them on different campaigns to do that. So, yeah, and I think we have about 600 donors across the country. So, yeah, it's a pretty big community given how young we are.
Cool. How would somebody say become a volunteer? Like, is there a place they can go to on the website or something?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is evidencefordemocracy.ca, and there's a Get Involved button that gives all of our current campaigns that people can participate in. Like, we've got a few different science-related petitions on the go. It gives ways to volunteer, ways to join the network of experts, and then, of course, donating as well. So, yeah, it's all on the website.
Awesome. That's it. That's all the questions I have. Is there anything that you'd like to specifically mention?
Let me see. I think that's it. I think, we talked about what happened this week, which is really, really a huge development. So I think that, we're actually getting kind of close to our goal of making science and evidence-based decision-making an election issue. So, and what we're going to be doing is, launching the science pledge, but then we're hoping to sort of work with our supporters on the ground and help them sort of figure out how they can make science an issue in their local riding. So, we'll be sort of giving them like questions that they can ask at their all candidates debates, okay. Providing them with flyers if they want to hand them out on campuses, or, we have so many professors in our network, getting them to put a slide up at the end of their lectures. So we're really we see it as, we're sort of creating the tools and then handing those over to our supporters across the country and, sort of letting them use them, how they best see fit in their local ridings to help make this more of an issue.
Okay. No, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me on this and doing the interview.
No problem.
And I suppose have a good one.
Well, thanks for having me, and always happy to do it again. Just let us know.
Okay, so there you go. That was Katie Gibbs. If you want to go and check out Evidence for Democracy, you can find them at evidencefordemocracy.ca. They're pushing back against the anti-science sentiment in the Canadian government, and everyone should go and find a way to help them. If you want to find a way to help us continue producing the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/brainstormpodcast and become a patron. $1 an episode makes a big difference in the continued production of the show. You can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/brainstormpodcast or follow us on Twitter at brainstormpod. You can give us a rating and write a review or on iTunes or Stitcher, and share the show on your various social media sites. We're even on Google+. If you want to get yourself any Brainstorm logo gear, go and check out the Cafe Press store, www.cafepress.ca/brainstormpodcastgear. Or keep an eye out for one of our t-shirt campaigns on Teachip. That's all the upselling I'll do this episode. I'll try to have another episode out before the end of the week. I've got 2 recordings with the whole crew to edit and publish, so keep an eye out for those. Thanks for listening and have a great day.
The This is an opinion-based podcast. Each person on the podcast is responsible for their own opinions, and those opinions don't necessarily reflect the views of the rest of the panel. Any guests or anyone associated with the people on the podcast, such as spouses, partners, children, other family members, friends, or employers. No one person speaks for the podcast with the possible exception of Corey, and he doesn't speak for anyone else on the show. The Brainstorm podcast does not represent the views of our sponsors.